Deer and elk hunters, if you would like to see the most efficient, hard-hitting, light recoiling cartridge ever created for deer and elk hunting, look quickly before it's gone. On this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors. We hunters are always saying we want the most efficient cartridge out there. We want to get the most horsepower from every grain of powder. How do we do that? That's what we want in a cartridge. We also want a good wide bullet to make a bigger hole in our deer and our elk for better blood trailing, and we just think it kills them faster. And we want to put a lot of thump or energy on the animal, but we don't want to put so much on our shoulders. So we want light recoil. We kind of want everything. Well, the frustrating thing is when a cartridge company comes out with a new round that does all of that, we ignore it and it's about to die. So that's why I said look quickly before it's gone, because this new cartridge, which only came out in 2006, is on its way to the graveyard. So we need to pay some attention to this guy. So I am going to now reveal with my thumb behind my hand here the magical cartridge we're discussing today, 338 Federal. Bet you've never shot one. Well, I have, and I can tell you what, it really works. But before we get into that elk hunting story, I want to thank all of our patrons for supporting us on Patreon. If you'd like to join them, I'd sure appreciate it. Just go to patreon.com, Ron Spomer Outdoors, and you can join up. Love to have you. Hey, and the other thing is I want to announce RSOTV.com. There are a lot of things in hunting, shooting, ammunition, hand loading that we cannot cover on these public forums. So if you want to get the full story, the rest of the story, the in-depth reports on how guns work and how to fix them, gun cleaning, and all the things that they don't let us show, go to RSOTV.com. Now, it is a subscription, $5 a month. We are putting out one video a week right now, and we've got a lot of older ones in there on some of the hunts we've done around the world, really. So we would love to have your support there. The more we get, the more of these videos we can produce on RSOTV.com. Appreciate that, too. I think now we can dive right into this 338 Federal. Why didn't it make it? So obviously, the 338 Federal looks a little bit familiar, does it not? That's because we all know its parent cartridge, and it is a super famous cartridge. In fact, it's one of the top-selling cartridges in the US of A, if not the world. Been around a long time, since 1952, 308 Winchester. That is a parent cartridge to a lot of other cartridges. So all they did was they took that 308 Winchester, necked it up to take a 33 caliber bullet. Bingo, 338-08. That was a Wildcat. I don't know who first came out with it, but you know how Wildcatters are. As soon as the new case shows up, they're necking it up and down and making all kinds of fun stuff. Federal had never produced a cartridge with their name on it. This one was out there, and it fit what everybody always says we want. That efficiency. So they built it, called it the 338 Federal, and we promptly proceeded to ignore it. So let's look at some numbers and see if we can't figure it out. We're going to compare the 185 grain bullet against the 308 Winchester with a 180 grain bullet. Pretty close in weight. Obviously, we've got the same powder supply, so let's just see what we can do. We're going to be able to drive the 338 at 2,650 feet per second. And the 308 comes in at 2,600. Obviously, hand loaders, different ammunition, it's probably going to shoot different velocities in various rifles, but this is a pretty good average. So we're going to zero these for, since it's kind of I think it's a great elk round. We've got a pretty good sized target, bigger deer. So I think we can go with a 8-inch diameter vital zone. So we're going to keep our trajectories no higher than 4 inches at our max ordinate. So 4 inches high is going to happen at about 150 yards with the 338. And by golly, it's the same, 150 yards with the 308 Winchester. And then where do we get to before we drop more than 4 inches? Well, pretty close to 300 yards. At 300 yards, we're dropping 4.78 inches out of the 338. And exactly the same out of the 308, 4.78 inches. Pretty cool. Let's just check any differences on our wind deflection. Now, the 308 Winchester should win this one because narrower bullet. Still have that weight pretty close. Only 5 grains off on the weight. But let's jump right out to 300 yards on our windage. And we've got 8.2 inches of wind deflection and a 10-mile-an-hour right angle wind out of that 338. 7.27 out of the 308. So a little bit of difference, not something that elk or deer are going to notice, and you probably won't either, but there it is. Step out to 400 yards and you've got 15.2 inches out of the 338 and 13.4 out of the 308. So it's starting to widen out a little bit, but still for hunting big game, it's probably nothing worth worrying about. Now, what about energy on target? A lot of us would think, hey, bigger, a wider diameter bullet, a little bit heavier, should have more energy, right? Well, the width really doesn't matter all that much. It's the weight of the bullet and the BC of the bullet downrange because of the efficiency factor. But let's just look at those initial numbers. Energy right out of the muzzle, 2,885 foot-pounds of energy out of the 338, 2,702 out of the 308 Winchester. 5 grains bullet difference and the 50 feet per second difference in velocity. That's your benefit on the 338 on that one. But what happens downrange with a higher BC bullet? Things should start leveling out a little bit. 300 yards, 1,731 foot-pounds of energy remaining in the 338 and 1,727 remaining in the 308. See, they're caught up. I bet at 400 has gone ahead. 1441 for the 338 at 400 and 1473 for the 180 grain bullets. See, that's how the lighter bullets start to take over. There's less deflection in the wind and more retained energy down range just because of that BC factor. And white 85 is not all that heavy. So let's jump up to 225 grains. That is kind of the top end, I think, for the 338. You can get 338 diameter bullets at 250 grains and some even at 265, but I think that's just too much weight for that powder supply to push effectively. But 225, I think that's worth looking into. I came up with some hand load manuals in 2,450 feet per second. Seemed like your top end with that heavy of a bullet. So I think I used an Interbond bullet from Hornady for my numbers on the BC. 515, that's a pretty good high BC number. So we're getting energy at 2,999 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. That's a little better than we were getting out of that 185. Yeah, about 115. Not a huge deal, but something. What are we going to do with that energy, though, downrange? Are we going to retain more of it? 300 yards. Let's check it out. 1956 left in the 225. Only 1731 left in the 185. So you do keep more energy at those commonly hunted shot elk deer ranges. Out to 300 yards, you are going to have more energy. Now, is a couple 100 foot-pounds more energy one way or another going to make a difference? I don't think any elk you ask is going to say he can tell the difference. But if you think it's important, if you think it's going to increase your penetration or put more thump on the animal, there's where you're going to get your advantage out of that 338, the heavier bullet. But I think you're going to probably get more drop out of it. This is significant. 300-yard drop, 6.8 inches out of the 225 grain bullet, 4.78. Yeah, a couple of inches difference at 300 yards, but 2 inches, I don't know that I'd worry about that on an elk or even on a big mule deer. I don't think it's worth it. What about windage? 300 yards, you're looking at 8 inches, 8.2 inches of drift in a 10-mile-an-hour right angle wind out of the 185 grain bullet, 7.35 out of the 225. So once again, the higher BC is working to your advantage on that one. But again, there's just very subtle differences in any of this stuff. Now, I think there's something that's going to probably be the nail in the coffin, if it even needs one. This guy. 338 Ruger Compact Magnum. As you can see, it's also going to fit the short actions, but it's got that fatter case that's so popular these days. So you're getting more powder in there, and that means you're going to get more velocity. You're going to get closer to the performance of this big guy out of a short action. And I think that's probably going to be, if anybody wins with a short action 338, that's probably going to be the winner. I don't know. You guys get to decide. Depends on what you buy. If more of us buy the 338 than the Ruger, then that will be the winner. So that's your challenge. If you want something different and you want something efficient, like we always say we do, 338 Federal might be your baby, but get it before it's gone. Hey, this is Ron Spomer. Thanks for watching. I invite you to subscribe to our channel. Until next time, hunt honest, shoot straight.